the bit that really gets me excited about our product is that I could cut one pork belly into 10 portions, give it to 10 different chefs and have 10 different eating experiences, because everybody's got their own flavour profile, everybody's got their own technique, and everybody's going to present that dish a little bit differently.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Family and connection is at the heart of everything we do and feel as people. We fight for the very best lives for our children, feel unbridled love and acceptance by those close to us. After years of owning his own construction company, Jason Stephenson is spending too much time away from the family and feeling burnt out. Wanting a greater connection to his family and the region he lives in, he invested in a pig farm and began to revolutionise pork production down under. Jason, you're in a region that's known for extraordinary seafood. What makes it so special for farming pigs?
Well, the pigs themselves that we breed are a Berkshire pig, so they're very well situated to be outdoors and on the ground. Like they're a breed that's been their mainstay. So the land over here is well adapted to that. So I guess that breed realistically, as opposed to your conventional pig, does well outside. It doesn't get sunburnt. It's been doing what it's doing generationally. We pretty much almost run our pigs as a we say we're true free range, because they've got a lot of land and they're almost living like a wild existence, I suppose. So yeah, it works really good.
Did you specifically choose that breed of pig for the conditions that you have there in the Eyre Peninsula?
Not so much, because, as we'll probably discuss later on, our hand was forced a little bit and we ended up where we were location-wise once we changed from Boston Bay. But the reason we chose the pigs that we have with the Berkshire is simply because of the quality of the product and the beliefs we have in that product and the points of difference that it offers for animal husbandry, and also for its desirability for chefs and restaurant trade.
You just briefly touched on the fact that you were in Boston Bay and that's where it all sort of started. Can you take us back to that time? Because you weren't always a pig farmer.
No, I still am. Yeah. Well, I'm still own a building company. I'm a carpenter by trade, and to get some work-life balance and realistically side shift from the building into farming full-time, we bought a small 90-acre property above Boston Bay, so just near the Boston Bay winery and overlooking, obviously, where Andrew Puglisi grows his mussels. And so we went for that regional branding of Boston Bay, which was synonymous for some award-winning product, rather than the Port Lincoln, which was, like you suggested earlier, too heavily invested in seafood as a provenance. So we found that the Boston Bay worked for us. So that's working really good for us to start there. Look, a friend of ours owns a property at Coffin Bay, and he owns Berkshire pigs there, and that's sort of how we had our first exposure to the breed and the pork and the produce itself. And look, honestly, when we went there with our kids, we just had a fantastic time with the young pigs running around, and it really, tugged on my heartstrings, I guess, that lifestyle. But ultimately it was the edibility qualities of that pork that has sort of led us down the journey.
You mentioned that you still have a building company and you started pig farming for a work-life balance. Take us back to that time and that decision that you made and why you felt the need to try and find some balance.
Well, I guess, to be honest, I mean, I've pretty much, ever since I left school, I've done my apprenticeship as a carpenter, and I've been in the industry, and then, the natural progression to become a builder and move forward from that and doing some property development ourselves. But I guess it's just been all consuming, the building and, people's expectations. And, it's no different to people watching MasterChef or another cooking show. Their expectations on what they expect you to deliver for them at a restaurant, it's no different in the building industry, with people watching, different shows and then having an expectation on unrealistic timeframes and money and blah, blah, blah. So, look, it's, we wanted to side shift into the pigs because we just wanted to gain a little bit more life balance. Unfortunately, it hasn't quite worked out that way with, we're still building. And that's really because we've had 4 years of pretty horrific droughts over here. And then that has obviously led to, some financial losses in some capital of putting in crops and all that sort of stuff. So, we're still building. I must admit, my staff are amazing, and the support they've given me to help us to side shift. And then the guys that we've got working on the farms are amazing. So, I must admit, we've had some fantastic success, but the acceleration of our exposure to restaurant trade and the success we have is contributed by the people that are behind me. There's no doubt about it.
You mentioned that you seek a life of pig farming to get balance. What makes you happy about pig farming?
Look, I don't know. I mean, I must admit that any new life, for some reason, like if I drive past a paddock and see some young sheep running around, or you see a calf that's been born, or something like that, that new beginning, I don't know. There's something about it. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd like eating them. But, that's sort of why we're in it. But at the end of the day, that to me, it just I don't know. There's just something about it that I don't know, strikes a chord with me.
You mentioned that you originally started in Boston Bay, but you've moved. Tell us about the property that you're on now and the sort of life that the pigs live there.
Yeah, so, when we started at Boston Bay, obviously we've only got a 90-acre property there, and which is, reasonable size. But when we started the farm, we were sort of a little bit naive on the legislation regarding pig keeping, which is considered intensive. Any animal that is fed 50% or more of its diet from an external source, so our pigs obviously graze and blah, 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 but any animal that's fed 50% more is considered intensive. So chickens, an animal feedlot, and that was basically considered an animal feedlot, needed a development application. Unfortunately, our neighbours didn't feel that would be best for us, for them as well, and for the area. So, it just basically got too hard, and we ended up in court with the council. And from that, I had to have an injunction put in to give me time to work out exactly what we were doing. And so moving forward, I found a property in Rudell, which is just like it's about an hour from where we live. And we visited that. I found it at 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday. And I was there at 9:00 on the Tuesday, and I signed the contract on the Friday at 9:00. And that was 2,600 acres, a considerable amount of land and a lot of a fair bit of money. But I said to my wife, I wasn't prepared to let go of what we'd achieved to this point, and the dream of of moving forward and side shifting. And I really just believed in what we did, and I still do. It's like a massive leap of faith. But when we went up there, I originally went up there with my workman who was going to come up there with me and run the show. And we had a good look around, and I felt quite confident that we could make it work. And I rang my wife and I said, I'm going to buy a farm. Do you want to have a look at it before I buy it? And she said, you're joking. I said, no, I'm going to buy this farm. So she came up the next day and she felt the same, that it had been on the market for 3 years, actually.
Wow.
And it had been sitting there. And I don't know, divine intervention, you can call it what you want, but it was absolutely ideal for what we wanted. And it's been an absolute blessing.
You mentioned that the pigs love being outside and they don't get sunburnt. And you mentioned sort of that true free range. Give us a sense of how you've revolutionised pork production in that sort of natural bush grazing system that you have.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, a lot of people say that, we're quite innovative and, on the cutting edge. And I say, actually, I think we're almost gone back the other way. Like, when you look at infrastructure costs of shed production, all the stuff that goes into that, the economics behind the business. Like the fencing system that we have is quite efficient. It's quite cheap. You can do a lot in a short amount of time. The pigs themselves, like I said, being black, they don't get burnt. So everything sort of just molds together to work in a system that seems to really just mesh. But like I say, it is so far from cutting edge. It's almost, at certain times when we want to round pigs up and we're after a specific size, we can't always get what we want because we have to convince them that they have to go into the corral where we can draft them off. But so it comes with its own challenges. But I think the lifestyle of the pigs get to live and the ethics behind the business really stand up on our focus, I suppose.
Give us a sense of what happens on the farm. How much space do the pigs have to move around in, and what do they eat?
Yeah, okay. Well, there is actually a video that the guys can obviously log on and have a look on. If you just Google Boston Bay Smallgoods on YouTube, our video will come up. And when they really say a picture speaks 1,000 words, this shows really how we farm. But if people do watch that and then they sort of listen to my explanation, that they'll get a bit of a bit deeper insight into the way we farm. But our pigs live in very large communal groups. So you've got probably anywhere from 40 to 45 sows living with 3 or 4 boars in large family groups in paddocks. And so those pigs basically live like that full time. There's no hard shelters. There is shelters for the pigs, but they're all obviously 3-sided so that they can come and go as they please. No concrete. So those pigs basically live in large communal groups, and majority of those paddocks are very heavily timbered, so there's a lot of scrub in them. So what basically happens is those pigs just live their life. They mate up, obviously, and when it's time to have a baby, if they so choose, the mums will go into one of the shelters with hay in it to create, a nest, and then basically they'll have their babies in there. But 9 times out of 10, they'll go further away from the community, under a tree, pull up some bits and pieces, maybe take some hay or some, different weeds from around the place and make a nest, and then just have their babies out in the open or under a tree. So that real natural sort of thing. And then what they'll generally do is within 4 to 5 days of doing that, they'll stay there with the babies, come down to feed, but generally the babies will stay where they are, and then they'll come back and join the general community when they're sort of at an age that they're ready to thrive. So it's a very unique system in that respect. So when it's obviously we got the conditional seasons right, we broadcast seed through those areas, and then obviously you're getting natural grasses come up, and then they'll get some barley shoots. But we basically feed the pigs every day on barley that we grow on the farm. And then we therefore supplement their grazing. But I must admit, after 4 years of drought, it's by no means as picturesque as it has been. But that's the realities of farming.
What sort of impact did that drought have on you and the pigs over the last couple of years? Yeah,
well, I mean, realistically, we've obviously grown enough food. I mean, we crop 2,000 acres of our own land, so we've got headers, tractors, spray rigs, all the bits and pieces to put in and harvest and maintain our crop. We can then harvest that product and then store it and then on feed. So, I mean, the return on the investment to put that crop in has, led to probably, around a $70,000 loss just on that part of the business model a year for the last 4 years. So it's been, look, after last year, I must admit I was getting towards, December, and I was really losing hope, to be honest. I mean, it's been, with COVID and then having the seasonal conditions change like they have been, it's been bloody tough. But, I guess as a Aussie battler, you keep moving forward. But, we haven't been able to realise the profitability that is there. And I must admit, though, that means that the business has still been quite viable. So that when we actually do get the conditions that work, we'll definitely reap the benefit of that. But it really hasn't impacted the pigs too much. I have spoken to a lot of people that farm like we do, and they've noticed a considerable lessening of their progeny from their animals. And I do believe that, like a kangaroo will an abort a fetus or, eject a joey if the key conditions seasons aren't correct. And I think that the pigs, through some sense of their own, know there's not as much grazing available, as even though they get ample supplement feed, but the numbers just haven't been there this last few years, and a lot of people are saying the same thing. So, we're dealing with environmental factors that the big boys in the sheds are probably not. But it's definitely been tough, that's for sure.
Take us through the life cycle of a pig on the farm from when they're born to sort of when they're ready for market. Can you give us a sense of what time that is and what sort of weight they go to market?
Yeah, well, we've got a very mixed farming model, and obviously, I'm sure we'll discuss further on. Boston Bay Smallgoods. I've got an Italian background, and I must admit, I assumed we'd sell a lot more small goods than we do, but the fresh pork has definitely been our mainstay. But that is starting to swing a little bit now. But so that being said, the pigs go off at a variety of ages. So we do suckling pigs anywhere from up around that sort of 12 kilo mark for restaurants in Adelaide, Press Food and Wine, and then we send some stuff up to Darwin to Wharf One, and so those pigs are probably looking at a true milk-fed product and with a bit of grazing involved, but those pigs are probably only going to be sort of 8-9 weeks old. We have done some stuff to McGill Estate where those pigs were, I reckon they were only 3 kilo, like a big rabbit, really. And they were literally just pure milk fed straight off of mum, no more than probably 3 weeks old. And then the model changes depending on what restaurants are chasing. So our pigs would realistically be looking at least 30% longer to get to market size than your conventional pig, considering the amount of area they have, what they actually, the conversion rates, but also the amount of energy they expend running around because they've got the room. And so our pigs take a lot longer to get to market. So something that I generally like to harvest around the 70 kilo dress weight would be pushing about 9 to 10 months old, whereas your conventional stuff would only be about 4 to 5. So a massive difference in the inputs, I guess you'd say. And therefore, we've had to change the model where we actually, the life cycle of the pig is obviously born on the farm, grown on the farm, harvested at different times. But then because we basically own our own butcher shop, we break up those pigs and then direct market them direct to restaurant trade. We also then bone meat to send to specialists in the trade to then further produce our products such as the suppressor, cacciatoris, prosciuttos, our beer sticks, pepperonis, that sort of stuff. So, when a lot of guys that sell pigs for a living, farmers, and that's the easiest money you could make is honestly growing them and sending them off. We've created another whole job for ourselves with the vertical integration, I suppose, but that's really where our passions are, is servicing people who appreciate our product for what it is, but also, the ability for us to cook and move that forward and promote it that way. So, we could never have a pig on our farm that's too big. We harvested some choppers last week, so females that were at the end of their productive cycle. We did 10 pigs last week with an average of 159 kilo carcass weight, skin off. So, you're looking at something that was running around in a paddock sort of in excess of, have to be 260 to 300 kilos. So, and the meat you can harvest off those animals and what you can do with them, really, it is unlimited. And I think that's where we've been able to capture a marketplace where we can diversify our risk. And by that risk, I mean, like, if a company goes broke, and that we're seeing that happen, obviously, you can lose a whole arm of your business straight away if you're too heavily invested into one particular producer. So what we do is we've got up to 5 producers that all we cherry picked from them what we felt was their best product with our product married together. So we've got 5 different contractors working fee for service that create a different range of products for us. And if we lost one of those, we could replace it quite easily. It would take time, but it's not going to devastate our business like it has in the past when we lost a producer who was producing pretty much all of our small goods. So that arm of our business was lost overnight.
You mentioned your Italian background and love of small goods. Tell us a bit about that small goods side of things and the butcher and some of the things you make and what it takes to make great small goods.
Yeah, look, I tell you what, the old school breeds of pigs are getting less and less. The availability of that product is less and less, and appreciation of it. I must admit, with our pork, it's really an education process to your general public. Like, don't get me wrong, your discerning chef or foodie is going to know a Berkshire pig when you tell them about it. But, I could show a piece of pork to a chef or restaurateur, small goods maker, and they go, wow, Jason, look at your pork. It's got heaps of fat on it and it's creamy and, it's just, amazing. I just can't wait to work with that. And, that's what sells our product. And then you show that to mum and dad down the road and they go, oh, geez, your pork's fatty. And it's just a different appreciation of what it is, but it's an education process. And I say to the people, look, it's got a low milk temperature. It's the Wagyu. You can't overcook our pork. It just doesn't dry out. So it's just changing the perception of things. And I think there's an absolute marketplace for everything that is produced in Australia. And I'm not going to bang on about why we shouldn't be importing because we don't need to be. Everything's here, but there's a commodity product and that's servicing a lot of the market. But I do believe, and I don't knock our competitors because there is a marketplace, but I do believe the flavour has been bred out a lot of product that is being commercialised to meet the demands of the consumer. And we are the complete opposite. So we're looking for more fat, which is flavour, and the ability to keep it moist. We don't, moisture infusion obviously is a tool that's used to enable a more meaty product with less intermuscular fat to remain moist. But obviously we're doing that naturally. So it is different. But so back to the small goods. Yeah, we've been able to work with quite a few different producers in Adelaide and the talent that is here. It's all old school. And getting those guys up to speed with legislation and requirements, batch testing and all that sort of stuff has been challenging. But, some of the stuff, I tell you what, there's some of the stuff that comes out of people's garages in Adelaide, you just about fall over how good it is. But obviously for commercial sides of things, we're definitely, everything's above board with batch numbers and HACCP and all that sort of stuff. So we're up on that. But we've got a great bunch of guys doing different product ranges for us. So we do obviously an all-female set of small goods, and then we've got a blended product as well. So, but obviously all the single muscle stuff is female. So prosciuttos, lonzas, capicolo, that sort of range of products. Prosciutella is traditionally all from a female. It's got a better fat cover. It's a sweeter flavour, nuttier meat, and yeah, we do that. So then we've got some salamis and emulsified products that have got a blend of male and female in them because there is a bit of a stigma about using male product. But as a farmer, you're basically producing 50% males and females. So you have to be able to use them through the business model. So, the product range varies. And I guess having our own butcher shop too, we don't order in a piece of meat as a butcher that's going to have to be not manipulated, but reworked to send back out to a restaurant and have, because we've bought that meat, we have to send it back out. If we get something from our pigs and it's not quite up to spec, or we can then dice that out and put it down for our trims to make salamis. We can, if we're not happy with the product, we won't send it out. We're the last line of defense to protect our brand and ensure our customer really gets what they're after.
You mentioned your love of small goods, but the popularity amongst the chefing fraternity of the fresh pork. How hard was it to get traction with restaurants when you were starting out?
Look, I must admit, my good friend Andrew Davies, absolute legend that he is. So, head chef of, was ex-chef of Press Food and Wine and Odgie in Adelaide. But my friend, actually, my cousin, built his restaurants for him in Adelaide, fitted them out, and happened to mention that I was getting into pig farming and we should meet. And I had a meet with Andy in Adelaide and met Belle, his beautiful wife. And like Andy's sold by the story. And I said, look, mate, he goes, I'll buy everything you can produce. I said, look, for the next 6 months, we're not going to actually be able to sell you anything because the availability of product just wasn't there. We actually had to buy in as many breeders as we could and then breed from them to get numbers to actually make the model viable. And I must admit too, my son, we started 5 years ago, so he would only be 9, and I'd be trawling the internet and see a couple of Berkshire sows for sale at, Murray Bridge, and I'd say, pack your bag, mate, we're going for a drive. And he'd go, where are we going, Dad? I said, well, we just put the trailer on, mate. We're gonna go and get some Berkshires. And the amount of kilometres we did throughout South Australia and into Victoria to buy pigs to enable us to get an economy of scale to actually set the farm up is gobsmacking. And it's that's been part of our success, I suppose. The desire and the hard graft enough to just go and do what it took to get to where we are. But getting back to Andy and the restaurant trade, we finally were able to supply Andy with some product, and he was running that through Press Food and Wine and Osteria Odgie in Adelaide. And we were doing full leg jamons and prosciutto. And before we were doing massive amounts of product, Andy invited me to go along to one of the single site dinners through Tasting Australia at Plant 4 in Bowden. And we had a bit to do there with Simon Bryant, and we hand carved some full leg prosciutto, and we did some of our product. And there was a lot of influential people there. So Lachlan from Hentley Farm and the guys from Finos, and I think that those sorts of things gave us a little bit more instant credibility. That we've now earned that credibility, but it definitely accelerated our exposure to the marketplace that has a desire for what we can offer them.
What surprised you about pig farming? You've been in the game for a little while now. And is there anything that has surprised you or made you happy during this process?
Oh, look, I mean, it's just, well, as we've discussed, I mean, we're doing this on the computer because I've had to turn my phone off because it just rings flat out. And that's to do with the building company as well, don't get me wrong. But there's, pig farming in general, when I say the lifestyle of that, it's working the land, working the pigs. It's something that can be done at your own pace to a certain extent, that if you don't get it finished today, you can do it tomorrow, and you can move along and you can actually enjoy it. Whereas with my building company, you got 3 or 4 blokes standing on site. If someone else hasn't done their job, or if a delivery doesn't come, and the stress that's incurred with that, you're going backwards $200 an hour whilst guys are standing around. So I guess the freedom that that business model has given me, as much as I'm not there full time, the glimmers of hope that moving forward that I can, work with these guys at their pace. And I tell you what, they say things are pig-headed, far out, man. Like, you've got to work with them. You can't tell them what they want to do. And it's just, and that's helped me to step back a little bit in my sense of urgency and really evaluate how to move forward at a better pace so that life is more enjoyable.
A little earlier, you mentioned the joy that it gives you when you see new life, a new sheep or a new pig being born. And but you also mentioned that you also do love eating them. Let's talk about cooking. Are you the cook in the house? What's the best cuts and ways to cook your pork?
Yeah. Well, look, I only cook when I'm happy, so it's not all the time. I must admit, my wife will admit I can cook better than her, but she's a lot more stable than I am. I must admit. But look, we do a lot of events. A friend of mine, Mark Barron, he owns the Coffee Baron in Adelaide, and he's a coffee roaster. And we teamed up with him. So he's basically the smoking grillers, and he's got a large offset smoker. So we do a lot of event-based stuff, beer and barbecue, Tasting Australia, Tunarama, that sort of stuff, where you can be pushing out 1,500 meals in a session, large volume, and we've got that down pat now, and I really enjoy it. But I must admit, I just I enjoy cooking our pork. I love pork scotch, the neck. I think it's probably the most premium cut. The intermuscular fat that runs through that is just phenomenal. And I've really got my wife was a little bit disappointed marrying an Italian. She thought she was going to get pasta, and I just love Asian flavors and coriander and lemongrass. And so I do a lot with that sort of stuff, marinated pork over charcoal. And I'm a real, like if I'm not barbecuing or cooking over charcoal or wood, I'm not really interested in cooking, to be honest. I must admit, it's refined caveman. It's not, it's not full caveman, but it's, yeah. And I do enjoy cooking that. And it's funny, you go to events and we get knocked a little bit by people, especially we can be a little bit confronting when we've got whole animals spinning over charcoal. And, I guess once again, it's still an education process. And we have some people say, that's horrible. That animal doesn't deserve to be there and blah, blah, blah. And I say to people, if this animal wasn't destined to be where it is right now cooking, it wouldn't have been born. And I think once again, with an education process for what we do, we try to maintain that lifestyle of the animals and the life they get to lead before they end up where they're ending up is the best it can be. But the bottom line is if these pigs weren't being pushed forward and these rare breeds weren't being marketed with points of difference, these things would just die a natural death of extinction. So, but once again, I say, once you go black, you never go back. Like our pork is, she's totally different. That's for sure.
You're renowned for some amazing small goods, and there's incredible chefs in Australia using your product. What's the best dish that you've seen using your product?
I'm definitely I'm not going to dodge the question. All I can say is that the ability, and I think that's the bit that really gets me excited about our product, is that I could cut one pork belly into 10 portions, give it to 10 different chefs, and have 10 different eating experiences, because everybody's got their own flavor profile, everybody's got their own technique, and everybody's going to present that dish a little bit differently. So I must admit, the thing that gets me excited, or my best dish, is something new and something exciting. Because, like I say, some people are just going to roast it and put it straight out like that with salt and a bit of crackling on top, and then someone else is going to braise it and serve it with rice and lemongrass. So it's just completely it's completely up to the individual, I suppose. But I must admit, the dining experience of trying different things is what makes me a happy man, I suppose.
You've got an amazing premium product, and it's been a tough couple of years. But what's the next couple of years looking like for Boston Bay Smallgoods, and what's next for you?
Well, I guess COVID has taught us a lot of lessons that diversification is a fantastic business model. And, like I say, we went from heroes to zeros overnight when the restaurant trade closed. And, I sympathise with everybody that was involved with that. And, we still had to feed our pigs, and we still had to maintain them, and we still had all the everyday bills. We never had the income, but, thank you for the job support. I'll put my hand up for that one. But JobKeeper, that being said, it, as we discussed earlier, our model is so diverse that we're probably coming out of COVID with maybe, 5 or 6 more ton of product than we would have if we continue to sell. So, granted, we didn't have the income straight away, but we may reap the benefit of that over the next 12 months simply because we've got more product. So, yeah, it's been tough, but it has made us diversify. We went into a model where we were actually harvesting slightly smaller animals around the 50 kilo mark and cutting them and portioning them down into a 10 kilo family box. We would then, obviously that had a roast in it. It'd have some loin chops, a piece of pork belly, some shoulder chops, some of our sausage range, we would pack that down into sort of, packs of 4 chops or whatever it might be, and then freezing those. And we were doing a 10-kilo box to families for $140. So that was our product, basically portioned, packed, frozen, ready for mum and dad to pick up for $14 a kilo. Now, the uptake on that was pretty sensational locally. We sent a bit to Adelaide, but within our community, the people really got behind us, and they knew we were doing it tough, and the support for that was interesting. So that's something we have continued to do, because our product is still desirable for mums and dads, that people that like our product locally. But yeah, we've then gone into some shelf stable product. So we're actually doing some single serve beer sticks and pepperonis now that are 6 months unrefrigerated. So they're in a 50-gram serve, and we can basically post them anywhere in the country. So, service stations, tackle shops, cafes, liquor shops. It's just an endless opportunity for us to market that product to people. So that's come out of COVID. We maintain that product is a zero lips and arseholes policy. So we're using boned shoulders and boned legs, and the product that we're actually pushing out from that is amazing, and it eats really well. And surprisingly, the Berkshire, it's all there. So that's also led us to do a label that's called the Collaboration. So what we can actually do is take 2 bottles of wine from any winery around the country or around the world, theoretically, put it with 50 kilos of our meat, and do a small batch run under the Bay Smallgoods Collaboration label, which is a red wine, cracked pepper and garlic. Now we can then send that back to that individual winery, who can then retail that back to their customer base through their cellar door, or form it into gift baskets. So right now, the mainstay of the product that we sell to supermarket trades is actually got the Boston Bay Shiraz in it, because obviously it just makes sense to team up with some regional branding. So that product is gaining some real good traction, but it just gives us an opportunity to partner with anybody that wants to do a collaboration with us to enable that product to then go back into their cellar door, or we can do an event with a massive pub or any winery that wants to then have a product made, then we can team up with them and do that. So, it's really made us put our thinking cap on and work out how to move forward, diversify the model, and then, COVID-proof the business moving forward.
Your goal to be a pig farmer exclusively, how far off is that, do you think? Is there a time that you see in the future where you can let go of construction and just work the land?
Absolutely. I mean, it would be this afternoon if the planets aligned properly, I can tell you. I would literally walk out the door and not look back. But unfortunately, it's the finances and stuff. Look, I mean, if we get a decent rain this year, and I'm talking average, I'm not talking over the top at the right time, it could be as soon as next year or the following year. So it is part of that. I guess the other side of that too is we've also found ourselves with the event-based stuff, and what we've been able to achieve with cooking our product, that I'm actually probably cooking in excess of 30 days a year now. So having some fantastic staff to back us up on the farm, or I must admit, I actually back them up. I'm not going to go up there and walk onto my farm where someone's been running it full time and tell them what they should be doing. I go up there and I end up working for them. They've got the more intimate knowledge of the day-to-day running of the business, and I've got the the umbrella over how to finance it, market it, the ultimate goals. But the day-to-day stuff, the boys are doing that, and they're doing a fantastic job of it. So it's like I say, it's a team effort. But that being said too, there is some point in time where the event-based stuff can be done purely from a business perspective and an enjoyment perspective, rather than chasing your tail and driving all over the country to promote the product once you've reached a point where you are, where you need to be financially, and what you're producing and what you're selling is the same amount. So I'm looking to the point one day where I will literally have one job instead of building, also being the promoter and the cook, definitely not a chef, but a cook, and then having the facility to work on the farm in all aspects, as well as seeding and harvest and spraying and animal husbandry. But I guess that being said, too, my kids, my lad's nearly 14, and well, he's 14 now. He's nearly 15. My daughter's nearly 11, and they've got some wonderful attributes that are, pushing me forward to say, well, I can see my daughter more in customer service and promotion of the business, and then my son more working on the farm and helping to move that forward. So with the amount of land we've got and the facilities to continue to move forward, like the opportunities for our kids, once they've gone out and got a bit more life experience, they're not just going to go and work for mummy and daddy. I think for them to be able to come back and push that forward, it's a huge opportunity. So, but that being said, I guess it's probably not overly common knowledge yet, but at some point this year or early next year, we're actually building a restaurant in Adelaide, in Uradla. So Andrew Davies will be heading that one up, and I think then we're going to get the true paddock to plate experience from Boston Bay, where our pork will be pushing through a restaurant that we own a percentage in, and will be that's going to be a real representation of the Eyre Peninsula. It's not all about pork. And I guess the thing is with me, with the Peninsula, anytime there's an event here, we always get invited because we don't have any competition in that respect, because we're pretty much the only pig farmer doing stuff commercially. But, there's a lot of different oyster producers. There's a lot of different tuna guys. There's only one of the kingfish, but all those different bits and pieces, they seem to compete. But whereas we get invited to everything, but the restaurant that we intend to build in Adelaide is really going to be a branch for niche small producers to get some quality airtime for their produce into Adelaide. So, yeah, that's another exciting stage of the business that is really going to, you hear a lot about provenance and paddock to plate. And, like I said, I don't knock my competitors because everybody does it slightly different. But for me, the authenticity of our business and the true provenance of product is what will definitely give our customer base the discerning option of what is, really happening.
That sounds extraordinary, and very much looking forward to seeing that come to fruition. Jason, as always, it's amazing to talk to you and to catch up. We've loved having you on the Crackling. Keep in touch, and very much looking forward to see what happens with this restaurant and Boston Bay Smallgoods moving forward.
Thank you so much, mate. Anytime.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.